Coogs house. All right, I just can't move past that. I know we got more football this weekend and basketball and so on, but I'm just not done.
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, Daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth. I'm a Houston fan or just a hitter who came step by. Thank you for making Locked On Cougs your first listen day. Appreciate making this your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Cougs. If you want to join the conversation, but don't say, tell us in the comment down below what your highest bowling score is, because we were told on Monday that apparently this week feels like a bowl week for this Houston Cougar football program. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. We got more on that fun later, but I want to look at a couple things. I want to look at Baylor one last time before moving past them as almost like a blueprint of sorts on a quick turnaround. I want to talk some about what transfers that could require to see happen. First and foremost, the more I sit on this game from last weekend where Houston loses to Baylor 20-10, and the 10 being scored largely by the defense. Defense touchdown, defense sets a field goal, right? I guess they missed that field goal. That field goal they made was set up by the offense, but I can't get past thinking about the turnovers and that part of the abysmal offense that was played. 2 picks in the first quarter. Admittedly, I guess kind of you're trying to throw the ball to get down the field, get 2 scores or whatever, but it was the first 3 turnover game Baylor defense has had all year. Not a strong defensive unit to have that happen against. And, there's just moments in that abysmally that offensive performance that I just feel like we're all kinds of wonky and bad. And I think that I actually sit on like how bad they open the second half with. Because one thing to have bad first half, go to halftime, regroup, reconvene, talk through the pictures, talk through the whatever, and see what you can do better. They opened the second half with the ball and took nearly 7 minutes to drive down the field. And I don't mean to be that guy, but when I look at this offense all year long, if you're going to take that long, you kind of have to score. These long drives are few and far to find, and frankly, the defense on the field so much for this football program that honestly, finding times like that feels like you've got to go score. And instead, they get a false start on 2nd and 7 to go back to 2nd and 12, and then with second and third down, they can't get anyone open, and that feels way more schematic to me when you're behind the sticks at 2nd and 12, 3rd and 12, because you actually had time to throw it. That wasn't necessarily a player's Sion's running around back there hoping someone's open. They did have a spy in at least the 3rd down play, so it couldn't have taken off and like that. And it's just emblematic because like Houston actually has more yards per play in this game than Baylor and had half as many points. The offense just has these moments like this where there are just these lapses, and they kind of come at the worst possible times. I mean, later as you cross from the 3rd into the 4th quarter, you have a 6-minute, 13-play drive that comes up with just 3 points. On that drive, you had a crazy Malik Carr bobble catch, a trick play where I guess Manjak's throw was kind of a duck, but you still got a bunch of yards out of it, get you set up inside the 15. Rashawn Sanford had a great catch on 3rd and 4 to get you down to the 6. And while I could go on and on about this, finally the time, it gets you to 3rd and 4 in the 6, I should say, because all year long, right, we've talked about how this team on 3rd and 4 more runs the ball way more than the average college football team. And 3rd and 4 inside the 6 is actually a time where I think numbers would argue you need to run the football, right? You need to run the football because, frankly, you're in 2-down territory. You're down at that point it was 10 points. You need 2 scores, and you want it to be a touchdown. Your defense has been killer all day long, so keeping them backed up is fine. and they actually pull back to throw on 3rd and 4 from the 6. Like, of all the times to choose to do that, not at midfield, not at 3rd and 8, not throughout the year, that's the time they choose to throw the football. And like rolled out left, which is admittedly, I guess, like the wide side of the field, but that is a hard throw for a right-handed quarterback, especially a young one. Remember, Zion is just a sophomore in terms of his eligibility. It looked like to me he was rolling out left, but that the routes weren't flooding left, and it looked like a sprint out protection. So I think at least Zion and the line were on the same page, but I don't know why you'd have sprint out protection left with the routes being predominantly in the middle of the field and like a late crosser. I don't know. It just baffling kind of stuff. You're down 10, you're going to need a touchdown. I say, I don't know why you don't run it on, you know, 3rd and 4, run to the left, hope set up in the middle of the field, and then get an RPO going back right if you don't get the first down on 3rd down, like RPO on 4th down and 4th and 2 or something like that. It's a whole lot different option. And if you don't execute, you don't get it. They practice too, whatever. Right? But that's not giving yourself and your offense a chance. And then you end the game with 2 late picks. And, like the one to Boogie was a bad ball. Boogie does get a hand on it. And I think a receiver coach would tell you that if you get your hand on it, you need to get it. I think Boogie would also probably own, because he's, a good athlete that understands his role, like that he should catch that. But also it was thrown kind of high and inside on a play that I don't know. It should have been high and inside. It should have been back shoulder or outside. Anyway, it just, I don't know. He's so clearly got his man beat, and there's all this air under the ball that the guy comes back into the play. Last pick, I guess, in talking through it with a buddy, my buddy's pointing out, like, at that point, you're just trying to throw the ball because you got to get something moving. And so I guess while it goes down the stat, she has an interception, like, you're just trying to push or whatever. I don't know. It's all frustrating, right? And it's all extremely frustrating because it feels like there's regression, and it feels like there's regression again. I feel like we started the year talking about how Donovan Smith regressed. We needed him to take steps forward to make this program better. Admittedly, he may never have been healthy. And for what it's worth, I wanted to be Donovan really bad. He's a great person, and I'm sure he's going to do a lot of great things. I wanted it to be him really bad, and he, not healthy, didn't progress, regressed, whatever, didn't. And then Zion comes in, and those first couple games, I think it's fair to say, like, he looked like he was going to be better. It looked like things were going to be fixed. And then as people have gotten more tape, we've got this regression backwards. And the offensive staff, you've got to, I'm not saying you put in an entirely new set, a series every week, but you've got to continue to build. And it feels like other defenses caught up and there was no building done. Just disheartening. And I look at the offense again. We outlined it in the other show recapping the Baylor game, but you've gone without an offensive touchdown in 4 games. You had a garbage time touchdown against UNLV. You had a broken coverage defense against Oklahoma that scoring a touchdown against. So essentially, in like straight up game planning kind of moments, first team versus first team, that's half your season without a touchdown. That's just unacceptable. Like, there's no level of football. And I coached high school football for 9 years. I've been an educator. There's no level of football that an offense can go half the season without an intentional touchdown. And that's just bad. There's no, you can fixes and this and that, but like, that just isn't gonna fly. I've seen middle school coaches asked to step down for things like that. You just can't do that. Especially as we talked about in the earlier show. You got a historically good defense if they just had a chance on the other side of the ball. I mean, they're playing at an extremely high level, given all the obstacles the offense puts them in, right? And just a big letdown. You see the moments where, like, the Fritz staff and the defensive step up. They're willing to make the change in the 3rd or 4th game to go to Zion. You're willing to make the different moves to make things right. I think there's very clear, visible elements, even just like the effort, where this isn't a better position than they were in a year ago. So I don't mean to say that they got to throw all the baby out with the bathwater and clean the whole thing out every year, every time something goes wrong. But the offense is just unacceptable. And I on Twitter saw different people talking about different things and got another week of the season to talk about that kind of stuff. But I do want to get a jump on talking about one off-season offensive topic in a second, because I think it's going to be one you might want to keep your eye on this upcoming weekend as well. But before we get to that, remind you that today's show is brought to you by FanDuel as we get into the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5, get $150 of bonus bets if you win. FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets and NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page. You place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You get started with $150 back in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. It's FanDuel.com. Now, where's the hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Parker Ainsworth, Locked on Coogs here, still reacting to Houston losing Baylor over the weekend, 20-10. And I think that one thing you're seeing across the board here is the AP poll has come out Sunday afternoon, and we're waiting for the college football playoff poll to come out on Tuesday. Not that Houston's got a shot at any of those things really, but across the board, there's one large thing happening across college football, and that is the idea of a transfer quarterback coming in to kind of save the day of sorts, right? And I will say, I think Houston's best quarterback in the near future is going to either be Austin Carlisle or Keisean Henderson. I don't think it's any secret that Carlisle is a big-time Ridge Point recruit coming in at class 2025 kids. He'll be on campus next year. Keisean Henderson, the #1 athlete in the state of Texas, chose Houston because he wants to play quarterback. He is a 2026 kid. I could see, for what it's worth, this is not today's episode necessarily, but Keisean having the Ryan Tannehill path where his first year or two, he plays some receiver, transitions to quarterback with some time at practicing at the Division I level on it, and then ultimately becomes a pro quarterback. He's that kind of athletic. I think that's kind of the development path you could see. He's too good an athlete to not have in the field early in his career, and that's why I think like Tannehill did at A&M, played some receiver first. But we'll talk about Keisean. We'll have a long time to talk about Keisean. He's going to be great Houston Cougar. I'm excited about it. I'm excited about Austin Carlisle too. But the truth is that you don't want to put a lot. What can you expect in rolling out a true freshman Austin Carlisle next year or a true freshman Keisean Henderson the year after that, right? The truth is that the way to build this program, you would hope, is to bring in somebody to compete with Zion from the outside. I'm not saying Zion is so far off they can't develop into a starter of a competitive offense. He needs to develop. He needs to grow. He needs to get better. But I think that someone coming in to push him that's also a veteran would be a big deal, because they'll be able to just say, well, so-and-so's a freshman. So-and-so's got to learn the speed of college football and stuff like that, whether it's Austin or Keisean at first. And frankly, if you bring in a transfer older guy, that could kind of be your bridge between they compete with Zion next year and then Austin plays the year after that as a redshirt freshman, having spent a year on campus, getting bigger, faster, stronger, or whatever, right? I don't know. I don't know what they're planning on doing. And Austin's really, really good. Maybe they get him out there in the spring, summer, like, okay, hey, we don't need anyone else. Who knows? He lit it up this year, senior year at Ridgepoint. But I think you look across the board, though, in the top 25 of the AP, Oregon, you've got Dylan Gabriel, who started off in Central Florida, then went to Oklahoma, and is now at Oregon. Ohio State, Will Howard started off at Kansas State. I'd even argue that, this is 1, 2, and now 3, Texas. Quinn Ewers is also a transfer. He started off at Ohio State, never really got to play there. He was a redshirt his only year there and went to Texas, but you could argue he's a transfer guy. Riley Leonard, quarterback in Notre Dame, started off at Duke. Kudus Rourke, he's at Indiana now. He started off at the University of Ohio. Sam Levitt, Arizona State's the highest ranked Big 12 team. He came in from Michigan State to Arizona State. It's a big deal, right? I mean, all these different teams. Cam Ward at Miami is the one that hurts me the most because he's from Greater Houston, right? He ends up at Incarnate Word, then goes to Washington State and is now at Miami. And, maybe it's because I don't want to see it be an SMU, but I could very much see Miami winning the ACC with largely because of the offense he's in charge of. And again, I think Carlisle and Keisean are the quarterbacks of the future of this program. I think you need some sort of a bridge, at least someone to compete with Zion between now and then. And that's I started looking around college football and guys from like the state of Texas that would like to come back to Texas, maybe, or from Houston want to come back to Houston. From the last couple of high school graduating classes, like I talked about him last year. Eli Stowers, he was at Denton Guyer up in DFW, went to A&M, played tight end at New Mexico State, now tight end at Vanderbilt. He's got more eligibility after this year as he went another run at quarterback to come compete. If he doesn't win the job, he can still help you. Yeah, I don't know. Kyron Drones, Shadow Creek kid, 2021, if my notes are right here. Went to Baylor, not Virginia Tech. Kind of hadn't had a great junior year at Virginia Tech relative to how good his sophomore year was. Does he want to come home and be more comfortable? Those kind of things that I really like a couple of the kids, but I'm going to say the ones I like for the end. Connor Wegman, A&M's been good since he got hurt. He went to Bridgeland High School. He was a 4-star kid. You bring him in, as kind of a let A&M do their thing, and we'll take him in here. He wasn't necessarily bad. Nick Evers, Flower Mound kid, went to Oklahoma, then Wisconsin. He's now at UConn. He's just been okay there. But he is a kid that I could see wanting to come back to Texas, play with bigger high school, bigger college program, trying to go into high school instead of Texas. Bert Emanuel Jr., I just saw on Twitter, is entered in the transfer portal. He's currently in Central Michigan, but he also went to Ridge Point High School. I think he was a 2022 or 2023 kid. The two kids keep an eye on here, though, were, I guess, if Jalen Milroe were to ever enter the transfer portal, he's from Katy Tompkins. He's been a 2-year starter at Alabama. Junior season's kind of been below average of what they want there. And I don't know how familiar you guys are with the Alabama, Mississippi college football scene, but they burn it all down when things go south, right? And I could see them running a lot of the guys on this year's team out of town in the offseason just because they just, quote, aren't good enough or whatever, right? And so if Milroe from Katy is trying to, like, do something different, he'd have a bunch of options, but I don't think it'd be ridiculous to think that coming home to U of H would be an option, right? The one I really think, though, that Houston ought to make a run at, and I'll leave this segment at this because this is not an insight thing. This is not a journalism thing. This is a taking wild shots at darts at a dartboard kind of thing. But Demetrius Davis, North Shore High School kid, lit it up at North Shore. I mean, incredible high school career at North Shore. Initially committed to Auburn. Alabama's where Milroe was, to Auburn, and didn't get a whole lot of run there. He is just a 5'10" quarterback, right? And Auburn's kind of had this gigantic NIL package where they can get whoever they want. It's not working out too well for them, but they can get whoever they want, right? And he then went from Auburn to Alabama State, stayed in state, did very well there. He's now at UTSA. I think the kid, former 4-star, can run, can throw. Obviously, a Houston kid. Does he get one more shot at the big time and play in a Power 4 school, come to the U of H, and kind of help bridge this gap again between where we're at now? Does he compete with Zion Chris? Does he push the program some as we get ready for Carlisle and then Keisean Henderson to come in? I don't think we need some like backup break in case of emergency plan, and all that, right? Like, I think we're okay. Those guys, both Carlisle and Henderson, be good. But between now and then, we gotta win some games. We gotta have better offense, and that's, I think, where a guy like Davis would come in, right? And so I look around the league and think, like, that's what's happening everywhere else. That's what other programs are being successful, is they're not playing necessarily a bunch of freshmen if they don't have to. They're not. One second. And we're back. The baby monitor being out of juice is never a sign you want to hear in the middle of recording. So that's where that goes. But anyway, this is a trend you're seeing across college football. I think it's one that Houston can take advantage of. And as I look across college football at like who we just played and how they've gotten to be relatively successful relatively quickly, I want to look at just what they've done in a second. Before we get to that point, I want to remind you today's show is also brought to you by Game Time, the best place to get tickets to basketball tickets in Vegas, football in Provo to wrap the season up, wherever you're looking to find the Coogs or other sports teams or comedy shows or theater other types of events with tickets. All things are on Game Time. Game Time Picks is the curation device that helps you make it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Lowest price guarantee means if you can find tickets in the same section and row for less, they can credit you back 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app. Create an account. Redeem code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On College, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Parker Ainsworth, Locked On Coogs here, looking at kind of getting back on track after a rough, disheartening loss to the Baylor Bears over the weekend. And, you know, I like texting Cam. Cam does Locked On Baylor. I think it's Locked On Baylor, Locked On Bears. Anyway, he does the Baylor show. And in texting him or another high school buddy that went to Baylor or whatever, back and forth, like what the deal is. How did Baylor turn around this year? They both mentioned something that I think is worth interrogating. And I was as surprised as anyone, and I laughed about it, frankly, that last offseason, Baylor decided to keep 3-win Dave Aranda. Aranda won 3 games. He lost to Houston, and Houston fired Dana Holgerson, who beat him. I was just in shock. And reportedly, after cleaning house with the coordinators, Aranda walked into the AD's office, Mac Rhodes, familiar name, with a, quote, shopping list. And the shopping list had a long list of things that they would need to be a successful football program. And some of those things included, like, I'm going to need X amount of dollars for this position, Y amount of dollars for that position. I'm going to need Z amount of dollars for this part of my stat. Like, breaking it all down and said, I need this in order to win. That's kind of when you saw the big change in culture at Baylor, where there's like very openly talking about paying players and stuff like that. All happened in the same offseason, really. And for what it's worth, Baylor went out and got some of those things. They got different coordinators. They spent the money on it. They thought they got the quarterback, and it was actually a different transfer from the year before, but they went out and spent thinking that was going to work. They got 3 transfer offensive linemen. One's been a starter all season long. A couple transfer wideouts, a linebacker, 2 D linemen. They've also put a lot of that money into 2025, 2026, 2024, even to some degree, recruiting and NIL efforts there. And I'm not here to say that 7-1 Baylor is the standard by any stretch. Houston, I would imagine, has their goals set a whole lot higher than that in the very near future. I will say, though, that it's an interesting look at it because a year ago, I'd argued Baylor and Houston were in the same spot. They were at the bottom of the conference, coaching staff that needed to go. They were in the same Big 12, right? Roughly the same recruiting spaces. Baylor being in Central Texas, Houston being in Houston. If anything, Houston's got an advantage there. Both have had good moments in the last 15 years. Whether you want to talk about Keisean or the 2015 or the Peach Bowl or the whatever, right? Like, Houston's had good moments in the last 15 years. Baylor, after stealing Bryles, you could say the same, right? But the difference was, or a difference was that their coach said, here's my shopping list, handed a piece of paper with a bunch of things he needed to pay for, and they found the money to pay for it. Now, some of that money is donations, some of that money is from fans, some of that money is from collectives, and all that means that it's not just an athletic budget kind of thing. But what would this program be like if Willie Fritz just was able to hand over a shopping list and get what he needed? If he could go get the money for that left tackle, that quarterback, that coordinator, that right, what would this program look like? I'm not saying that I expected, frankly, I was ecstatic they got to 4 wins. I've been hyping up getting bowl eligibility lately because I thought it was a real possibility, and I still think they could have beat Baylor and should have beaten Baylor over the weekend. However, I will say that with 4 or 5 wins this season, anything less than a bowl next year is a failure. It just is. And it's the same kind of thing where it's going to be, okay, is it a failure because we're not fulfilling the shopping list, right? Are we not giving Fritz that opportunity? Because there's moments, whether it's fighting at the end of the Baylor game, the defensive prowess all year long, going into Norman at the second game of the year and not being scared at all, right? Like there are moments where Fritz has clearly helped this program take a step forward from where it was before. Without going on and on about where it was before, it's safe to say that a year ago, the talent on this team with the culture and stuff from a year ago would be in a much worse place, right? A lot of talent left when all the staff changed over. Had that talent stayed, maybe they're an even better. Maybe they are in a bowl right now, right? Um, but on the whole, when you look at where guys went, they didn't. A lot of your key players that left from last year's team either went pro, Pat Paul, or went to programs with large NIL collectives, right? The Texases, the Miamis, Colorado, these big high dollar programs. And frankly, it makes you wonder, like, where would this program be if that shopping list got fulfilled? It's what Baylor did. And I'm not saying Baylor's even necessarily maximizing that right now. They're looking at 7, maybe 8 wins this season. And for how much they spent, I think it's a safe argument to say, like, they probably should have gotten more. However, they did spend, and they're there. And, you can say what you want about people in the stands and whatever. Baylor's had those problems too. And I'm not saying, again, that that's the epitome of where we want to be, but it's certainly somewhere between here and where we want to be. And I don't know where on that scale it fits in your mind, but I think it's safely somewhere in the middle. And it feels like that's a very necessary step. And so we got one more week. We're going to preview BYU this week. We got Jake Hatch on later this week. We'll break down what they need to do to win. I always hope myself into a victory by Friday. So I'm not saying I'm going to be doom and gloom all week long, right? But I do think you got to pay attention to, if this program is to move forward, it's going to cost money. It just is. It's modern college football, and they can work through and hit certain ceilings, glass ceilings before that, and so on. But we'll see. We'll see where that all goes. We'll be breaking down Houston's basketball program. Program's doing very well in terms of dollars per player and things like that these days. We'll be doing all of that this week as well. They get to play NIL Classic in NIL Players Invitational. I'm assuming it'll be a classic annual kind of thing very, very soon. All week here at Locked On Cougs. Locked On Cougs Daily Podcast about Houston Cougars with the Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every day. Go Cougs.